Hi, I'm Claire. It's day 7 of the 12 days of Clairemas, and it's also the 1st of January 2019, so Happy New Year, everybody! I am feeling a little bit under the weather right now as I sit down to record, so please bear with me if I sound a little bit funny in this video. And now that the year is over, let me tell you about my 10 favourite books that I read in 2018. In no particular order, because picking 10 was hard enough and I could not rank them further than that. First up we have The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. I love the premise behind this book. I've been a fan of historical fantasy and alternate history and things like that for a long time, but I don't think I'd read something that felt like historical science fiction before. Of course now I want so much more historical sci-fi. This book packs so much story in just one novel, and it's the same for the sequel, The Fated Sky. It's not just in terms of the amount of in-story time that it covers, but also in terms of the side stories, the B-plots, the various concerns that the main character has. The characters in this story are really great. There is a lot of dimension and depth, even for secondary characters and antagonists. And I'm super excited because Mary Robinette Kowal is writing more stories in this world, so I will obviously be there with bells on. Next up we have Toil and Trouble, 15 Tales of Women and Witchcraft, edited by Jessica Spotswood and Tess Sharp. This is an anthology about witches. I am the basic witch that kept her Halloween Twitter handle until Christmas Day because it had the word witch in it. I love witches so much. So maybe not a surprise that I found this anthology absolutely delightful. There were a few stories that I wasn't all that fond of in the book because that's how anthologies tend to go, but I like most of them and I loved a few of them. I've actually ordered myself a hard copy of this because I know I'm going to want to reread some of those stories that I really loved from it. Next up we have Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu. I don't think anyone who's watched my channel this year will be surprised at all to see Check Please on my list of favorite, given how much I've gushed about it since I first read it in January. I'm saying first read it because I've read it again several times since then. I can't believe it's been under a year since I've gotten stuck into this fandom. Next up we have Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. This is the 4th book in the Murderbot Diaries novella series. I've read 3 out of the 4 in 2018. All 3 of them could have been on this list. Honestly, they were that great for me. I said that Murderbot was my favourite character of 2018, and that's because it's really been a pleasure to see it grow basically as a person, as it interacts with humans on kind of a more even level, and it develops like a personality outside of just snark. I mean, there's a lot of snark. The reason I narrowed it down to Exit Strategy in the end is because I especially loved how it tied together all the threads from the previous novellas and how elegantly it sets the scene for the upcoming Murderbot novel that is going to be released, I think, in 2020. Next up we have Witchmark by C.L. Polk. This was one of my last reads of the year. I had been wanting to read it for a while and I'm super glad that I finally got around to it because it was fantastic. I found the world building and the magic system really compelling in this book. The mystery that the characters are investigating throughout the book, that unfolds at a good pace. I kind of got what was going on with the mystery like a page or so before the characters did, which for me is just the perfect time. Also, the romance in this was absolutely top-notch. For me, it was I'm going to look up fanfic for this couple level of loving it, which is saying something. It's got this great steampunky vibe, but it's also not afraid of getting really dark by the end, and I cannot wait for the next book in the series. I really love what got set up for that. Next up we've got A Spoonful of Murder by Robin Stevens. This is book 6 in the Murder Most Unladylike series, and if you've watched my channel for a while you probably already know I love this series. I've loved it for a long time. I don't usually read a lot of middle grade, a lot of murder mysteries even, but there is something really magical about this series to me. I am super attached to the characters and it's always great to revisit this world. This book really stood out to me even in a series that I already adore because the writing is so good. She attempts something so grand and fairly epic in scale and she succeeds at it so well, and also I had no idea what was going on with the mystery and it made perfect sense when it was revealed, like it works so well. Next up, we're doing a complete 180 with The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson. This is very much body horror. It's a novella, it's on the shortest side as you can see, very quick read, very atmospheric, very creepy. There is a framing device in this book that actually works, insofar as for me I got really stuck into the narrative and I forgot that the framing device was there in the first place until it came around at the end and smacked me in the face, and it made so much sense. Like I said, body horror, this one is properly dark, but it stayed with me and it wasn't just gross. It was pretty gross, but it made me think a bunch of like thinky thoughts about mortality and the self and violence and humanity. I am really looking forward to read more by Tade Thompson now, because this was a new to me author and I really loved his writing. Next up, we've got The Black God's Drums by Pete Jelly Clark. This is another novella, but this is steampunk, set in an alternate history St. Louis. And I love this for many reasons. I'm a big fan of steampunk and I'm always excited to see steampunk stories that aren't set in Victorian London, because we've had many of those and they start to feel a little repetitive after a while. But in this novella, the world building was really great. Even though it's quite short, you get a great impression of place, and the story itself is really self-contained. As far as I can tell, it's a standalone novella, and even though the world was great and I'd love to read more in this world someday if the author decided to write more, I'm actually perfectly content with the amount of story that we got in this novella and how it got wrapped up. It doesn't need anything more. I also really enjoyed the main character and how determined and resourceful she was, and as an added bonus for me, in this book there is a lot about mythology and language, and that is just my catnip. Super interesting, really loved it. Ship It by Britta Lundin is a novel about fandom, which you can tell was written by a person who is actually in fandom, someone who understands specifically transformative fandom, someone who loves it and values it. The story looks at aspects of fandom that really resonated with me and my experiences with conversation I see in my corners of fanfic fandom all the time about things like queerbaiting, representation in TV shows, stuff like that. But then it also looks at things like real person fanfiction, who fanfic is for, whether actors in TV shows should even be aware of fics and fan art. Those are things that I've never seen addressed in a novel before, and I love that. Also, I really liked what the book did with the point of view characters. They're clearly set against each other as foils from the beginning. You as the reader are primed to take sides, but over the course of the novel, I really became attached and invested in both of them, and I wanted both of them to be happy, and that was lovely. Finally, we have Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is an urban fantasy novel about a Native American monster hunter. The book is set in this really harsh and arid post-apocalyptic world. Right off the bat, you get this really cool Mad Max Fury Road kind of vibe, but with an addition of like ancient magic and demons and gods that have returned to the land after the end of the world. The protagonist is just as badass as you would have to be to survive and to thrive as a monster hunter in this kind of world, but there is also so much more going on with her character. I love the way that she grew and wrestled with her powers and what they mean to her throughout the book. There is a sequel next year. It is called Storm of Locusts. The cover is beautiful. I cannot wait. So that's it. These were my 10 favorite books of 2018. As always, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, and please also tell me about your favorite things that you have read last year. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all tomorrow for another video in the 12 days of Clairemas. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check out a previous video on screen right now. And if you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button that's on my face for a new video from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.